Claude Code just shipped a really interesting feature called Agent Teams. Instead of one Claude Code instance doing everything, you can run multiple Claude Code instances working together as a team. Each agent will have its own context window and they can talk to each other directly. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know about Agent Teams. I'm going to give you a live demo and I'm also going to show you everything you need to get started. So in order to use this feature, you will need to do some changes to your configuration. This is not a feature that's actually enabled by default, so it's relatively easy to do. All you need to do is basically ask Claude to add this line to your config. You add this to your Claude settings.json, and then you'll be able to use this feature, but it's not enabled by default. The other thing you might want to do if you're using this feature is to make sure you're using tmux, which is a terminal multiplexer. Essentially, it's a fancy way of saying you can spin up multiple terminal windows at the same time. It's a commonly used thing because it allows you to run multiple terminals and jump between windows really easily. But when you're using Agent Teams, this allows you to actually see all of the agents working together at the same time. You can actually see what they're doing. If you want to install tmux, there's some great documentation online, but it's really, really easy to install. You can just follow the Getting Started guide. It won't take very long. And just generally, tmux is a great bit of software. I've used it a lot over the years. It's super useful. So the first question, what are Agent Teams? Basically, Agent Teams let you run multiple Claude Code instances that work together on the same project. So you have one instance that acts as a team lead. It spawns teammates, it creates tasks, and it coordinates the work. Each teammate is an independent Claude Code session with its own context window. The most important thing, though, is that these teammates can actually message each other directly. That's the thing that makes this different from Subagents. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to spin up a tmux session. So this is a terminal multiplexer. When you do this, when you use tmux, Claude Code should, in theory, spin up new tmux windows for every subagent. So let's see if this works. The other thing you want to do is when you start Claude, you want to make sure that you use the dangerously skip permissions flag because we don't want to be approving anything. We don't want to be in the loop as we're building this application. So what I'm going to say here is read the prompt at .ai/prompts/build.md and use Agent Teams to build the application. So we're going to kick this off and see where we get to. So Claude has read the spec, and now it's trying to spin up an agent team and also create the task list. Okay, so we've defined the agents. So we have a backend agent that's going to build the fast API Python backend, and then we have a Next.js frontend engineer who's going to build the UI. And you can see now Claude is spinning up all of the different agents, which is pretty cool. So it looks like we have a backend and a frontend agent running at the moment. You can actually see what's happening in real time, which is super cool. So each of these agents is now working independently on their own task list. And then they're both blocked waiting for the code reviewer, who's then going to review the code once these two agents are finished with their work. So you can now see the agent team. We have the backend engineer who's working on the Python application, and we have the front-end engineer who's working on the Next.js UI. So what's cool here is you can see that the backend agent is actually spinning up a server. It's working completely independently on its tasks. And then the same thing with the front-end agent. They're working completely separately right now. So you can see here that the backend agent has now completed its work. And we're just waiting on the front-end agent to complete before we can actually kick off the next agent, which is the code review agent. I find it kind of funny that the front-end agent is taking so much longer than the back-end. I always thought that the back-end agent would be more complicated. Clearly, the front-end is the more complex part of this task. Okay, so now we've finished the front-end. The agent has completed. All files are in place and the build passes. We've marked all of the tasks as complete, and now we're kicking off the code review. Okay, super cool. So we now have the review agent, which has just started up. You can see this third agent has now been kicked off. This is the code review agent, which is going to give feedback on the other agents. Okay, so the code review is now complete. We found a few bugs. So one real bug to fix and one type mismatch. The UX issue is minor. I'm surprised. Often I find the code review agent catches quite a lot of fundamental stuff, which is a good reason why you shouldn't just blindly accept the output of these coding agents on their first attempt. It's rare that a software engineer would build something perfect on their first attempt. Often they make mistakes, and we always go back and we correct our work as we're building stuff. Okay, so now we've delegated the fixes. So we've delegated back to the front-end agent and the back-end agent, and they're just working through the fixes. Okay, so now we've completed the application. The code reviewer has reviewed the code, the backend and the front-end engineers have implemented those changes. And now we're just shutting down the agent team because we're done. So the next thing we want to do is kick off this application and check out what they've actually built. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they've actually done a good job one-shotting this relatively complex app. So Claude is telling us that the team has been cleaned up. The content repurposer app is fully built, reviewed, and ready to use. Let's see if that's true. All the agents have been shut down and the team resources have been cleared up. So let's see if we've one-shotted this application and check it out. I always like to boot up the servers within Claude Code because I find that it's able to then introspect in the logs and see where there are issues. I've just found this a really useful pattern. All right, so now we've got the backend API. We've got the front end on port 3000. Let's go and take a look. Okay, so here's the app that was generated. It looks like the thing I asked for. We're able to paste in a YouTube URL. We can output either tweets or Substack notes. We can define how many we want. And then we could also paste in some examples here. So the idea here is that rather than relying on generic AI output, we can give some examples of tweets in our writing style. I'm just going to skip over this for now. Let's leave this off. And then let's see if we can actually generate something from this. Okay, so it looks like we've hit an issue. The audio file is 30 meg, but it exceeds Whisper's limit. Okay, so we need to find a shorter video. Okay, so I'm going to go back and use a shorter video. So this video is only 5 minutes, so hopefully we can get around this issue. What you would probably do is now go back and feed back to Claude Code. We would probably need to break down this video into different sections so that we can then feed that into Whisper because there appears to be some kind of hard limit on how much it can handle at one time. So now we're transcribing the audio. It looks like we downloaded it and let's see what we get back. So you can see here we've generated a bunch of tweets. These aren't the most mind-blowing tweets. We haven't given any examples of our writing style, but let's take a look. Your Claude MD file should be ruthless for every line. Would removing this cause mistakes? Okay, so that's a pretty average tweet, but it's done a good job. It's pulled out the information from the video, extracted the transcript. This seems to be working. So this is quite impressive. It's one-shotted this entire application. And besides the issue with the file sizes, it seems to be working correctly. So this is pretty impressive. Just want to run you through a quick high-level overview of this feature in more detail. So Agent Teams essentially allows you to run multiple Claude Code instances. These are separate Claude Code instances. They're not subagents. You have one agent that acts as the team lead, which will spawn up different Claude Code instances and then coordinate the work of those sub-agents. Each teammate is an independent Claude Code session with its own context window. The most important thing that makes this different from something like subagents is that their teammates can message each other directly. They have a shared communication channel, a shared inbox, so they can actually send messages to each other. This is really the key thing, or the key thing that makes this different from something like subagents. So a couple of interesting things you could do here. You could have one Claude Code instance write code while another one reviews it, where the reviewer will send feedback directly to the writer who will then fix issues without you having to do anything. You could also have 3 instances working on different parts of your application at the same time. You could have a front-end agent, you could have a back-end agent. You could also have an agent that runs a bunch of tests or configures the infrastructure, for example. So if you've used Claude Code, you're probably familiar with subagents. You ask Claude to do something, it will spawn up essentially a separate thread where an agent will have a separate context window. It will run in the background and then it will feed that back to the agent. One of the main advantages of this approach is the subagent has a clean context window. It only gets some of the information. So if you're working on many complex tasks, subagents are a really powerful feature, but they can't talk to each other. So each of these subagents works in isolation. They execute what they've been asked to do, and then they pass the results back to the main agent. They cannot communicate at all. The difference here with agent teams is that they can actually communicate. We have a team lead, which is a Claude Code instance. Then it can send messages to each of these sub-agents or these sub-Claude Code instances. But the really important thing is they have both a shared task list and they're also able to communicate together. So the teammates 3, for example, maybe this is a code review agent, can actually give direct feedback to teammate 2, and then teammate 2 can act on that information. So they are essentially a team of agents working together. This is a really interesting idea. So I found this a really useful feature. There are many cases where I would use agent teams. This isn't a feature that you would use in your day-to-day work necessarily, but it is a really powerful thing that you can use to have a coordinated set of agents working on a much more complex task. The pattern I always come back to that I would use this for myself is the idea of a multi-step workflow where you have an agent that generates some kind of artifact, whether that's code or content, and then you have another agent which acts as a feedback mechanism that would review that work, provide feedback directly to the other agent, and then the agent can then make changes. This iterative workflow kind of represents how we work in the real world. A developer will rarely write perfect code the first time. Typically what will happen is that a developer will write some working code, but then they will open it up for review. They will find a load of issues. They will refine that, and then they will make changes to the code and eventually improve it over time. This is the typical workflow. Humans rarely get things right the first time, and it's the same with AI agents. Almost every time I use an AI agent, I always do some kind of review step because it's rare that the code is very good the first time. Agents are very eager to build, but they often make a ton of mistakes on their first implementation round. You can usually find a ton of issues by doing a review step. So something like that, where you have a multiple stage workflow, I think agent teams could be super useful and super practical as well. One thing I recommend checking out is this article from the Anthropic team where they built a C compiler using a team of parallel Claudes. Essentially, they used the same ideas here to build a working C compiler in Rust. They mostly just one-shotted this thing. This is pretty insane because this is a very, very complex, nuanced bit of software. And the fact that Claude was able to build a working version is really, really impressive. And it kind of hints at what's possible when we have teams of agents working together. It's pretty frightening. I was really impressed by this feature. I did find it genuinely valuable for tasks where you want to kind of stay out of the loop and you want these agents working together on a larger problem and talking back and forth. This isn't a feature you would use for all of your work. It's expensive. It has a lot of downsides, but it is a really interesting look into the future of agents and potentially the way we work with these systems. Hope you found this video useful. If you've got any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.